Hello there, this is World News Program on All 24 News, and up next are tonight's top stories. Hamas agrees to US ceasefire deal as new aid plan draws fire. Algeria says the occupation has reduced Gaza's children to numbers. Next up, Trump warns Netanyahu against action on Iran, as Tehran says enrichment is a red line amid talks of suspending it for US recognition of nuclear rights. Coming up as well, the Algerian products exhibition in Mauritania wrapped up with praise for growing ties and over 40 partnership deals signed across key sectors. And later on, the Kremlin says Putin puts national interests first as Russia prepares to present a settlement memo to Ukraine next Monday in Istanbul. Stay tuned for reports shortly. Welcome back to the program. In our news tonight, the Palestinian Islamic Resistance Movement, Hamas, has agreed to a US proposed framework for a permanent Gaza ceasefire and full Israeli occupation withdrawal. The deal, mediated by envoy Steve Witkoff, also ensures increased humanitarian aid and establishes a professional committee to oversee Gaza's administration post-ceasefire. A prisoner swap is part of the agreement. Hamas will release 10 occupation captives and remains, while occupying Israel will free an unspecified number of Palestinian prisoners. Similarly, U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff unveiled a revised Gaza ceasefire proposal on Wednesday, set to be reviewed by President Donald Trump before its official release. Speaking from the White House, Witkoff voiced strong optimism for a long-term solution, calling the plan a key step toward peace. President Trump urged all parties to back the proposal. On the ground, at least 60 Palestinians were killed and dozens wounded in occupation airstrikes across Gaza since Wednesday dawn, according to local sources. The attacks targeted homes and residential areas, with 9 members of journalist Osama al-Arbid's family among the martyrs after their house was hit. Strikes in Dar al-Balah killed 6, while shelling in Jabaliya's al-Fakhura area left 4 martyrs. 2 more were killed by occupation fire in Rafah's al-Mawasi district. The violence marks a sharp escalation amid ongoing ceasefire negotiations. Hamas on Wednesday rejected the so-called safe aid zones set up in buffer areas, calling them booby-trapped corridors used by Zionist occupation to exploit humanitarian aid as blackmail. The movement said scenes of desperate Palestinians under fire while collecting aid exposed the failure of this tactic. It also accused the plan of sidelining the UN to serve the occupation's agenda.
What are being referred to as safe distribution sites in so-called buffer zones are nothing more than coercive models of humanitarian corridors rigged with danger, turning aid into a tool of blackmail. The scenes of thousands of our people rushing into the center designated for this Israeli mechanism of aid distribution, accompanied by live fire on Palestinian civilians, underscores the failure of this dubious system, which has become a trip endangering lives. This plan was specifically designated to sideline the United Nations and its agencies, and to serve the occupation's political and military objectives.
UNRWA slammed the Zionist occupation's aid distribution model in Gaza, saying it defies basic humanitarian principles. Speaking in Tokyo, Commissioner General Philip Lazzarini called the plan a distraction from the atrocities unfolding in the Strip. He also denounced the chaos caused by the U.S. and Zionist-backed group handling aid this week.
The model of aid distribution proposed by Israel does not align with core humanitarian principle. It will deprive large part of Gaza, the highly vulnerable people, of desperately needed assistance. We have seen yesterday the shocking images of hungry people pushing against fences, desperate for food. It was chaotic, undignified, and unsafe. I believe it is a waste of resources and a distraction from atrocities. We have predicted that with this hub, people would be asked to walk for kilometers, which seems to have been the case, waiting long hours in the sun, waiting to be vetted and clear. And as you know, we as a United Nations have said we cannot adhere to this way of providing assistance because it falls short to abide to humanitarian principle.
The latest U.S.-Israeli humanitarian scheme in Gaza has again turned deadly, with occupation troops firing on hungry civilians rushing to reach food supplies. This cynical ploy, designed to whitewash the Zionist occupation's genocide while Palestinians starve, follows the same failed playbook as previous deadly aid operations. Here's Osama Ayadi with the story.
The humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip is still witnessing unprecedented deterioration. This is what happens when the cause of the problem imposes itself as the only solution. In Gaza, the one responsible for the starvation is the distributing aid. Chaos and confusion characterize the Zionist American mechanism for delivering aid to the Strip, a mechanism intended to become a reality despite escalating warnings against its approval.
Been watching the video coming out of Gaza around one of the distribution points set up by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, and frankly, these images are heartbreaking to say the least. As the Secretary General noted last week, we and our partners have a detailed, principled, operationally sound plan supported by member states to get aid to desperate population.
The Zionist occupation is pushing its aid distributing plan, attempting to bolster it with a media campaign that diverts attention from the reality of the situation. Crossings have been closed for weeks. Thousands of tons of aid are piling up on the Gaza Strip's borders, and hunger is ravaging its population. The random distribution of aids to the people of Gaza led to widespread chaos. It became death traps after the occupation forces deliberately opened fire on displaced people exhausted by hunger.
We continue to stress that a meaningful scale-up of humanitarian operations is essential to stave off famine and meet the needs of all civilians wherever they are.
At a time when it is turning a deaf ear to criticism and international and UN pressure to stop the war and allow the entry of aid, the Zionist plan for distributing humanitarian aid is sparking condemnation, considering the step nothing more than a distraction from the suffering of the Palestinians. Once again, the true aims of the occupation, as well as its declared plans, are revealed and exposed. The reality once again exposes its contradictory narratives and the falsity of its claims.
Algeria has strongly condemned the Zionist occupation's ongoing crimes in Gaza, warning that the killing machine has reduced children to mere numbers. In a powerful address to the UN, Algeria's envoy Ammar Benjama shared harrowing testimonies, including that of Palestinian Dr. Ala al-Najjar, who lost all 9 of her children in a Zionist airstrike. He stressed that the victims, aged between 6 months to 12 years, were innocent civilians not linked to any armed group, killed by name beneath the rubble of their home.
On the morning of Friday, May 23rd, Dr. Ala al-Najjar left her home for her shift at the Nasser Hospital. She didn't know. She didn't know it will be the last time she said goodbye to 9 of her 10 children. All were killed. The eldest was 12-year-old. The youngest, just 6 months. These are these children. They were not members of a Center for Command and Control of Hamas. In another horrifying scene, young Warda Sheikh Khalil, a 6-year-old girl, tried to flee the flames. The flames engulfing her school, her shelter, after an Israeli airstrike. Figures lost meaning. What is worth of saying 18,000 children dead? These are not only numbers. These are lives. These are dreams. These are voices.
Such harrowing testimonies. Additionally, Algeria's UN envoy renewed calls to end the Zionist aggression, lift Gaza siege, and hold the occupation accountable. He urged the international community to break its silence and stop the ongoing atrocities. Let's take a listen again.
We must resolve this conflict as its roots, not just a lasting peace can exist. Not just and lasting peace can exist without the realization of the Palestinian people's right to an independent state. As President Abdelmajid Tebboune stated, and I quote, "We must act decisively to end the ongoing historical injustice inflicted upon the Palestinian people. We must urgently revive the peace process, which is currently facing unprecedented deadlock."
In the same context, Ireland has outlawed imports from Zionist settlements in occupied Palestinian territories, becoming the first EU nation to take such action. The government called the move a direct response to the Zionist occupation war on Gaza and a violation of international law. Foreign Minister Simon Harris said the ban sends a moral message and urged other European nations to follow suit against settlement expansion. Switching focus to another development in the Middle East. Still, in a dawn attack Wednesday, Zionist occupation jets struck Sanaa's international airport, destroying the final plane designated to transport Yemeni pilgrims to Saudi Arabia. Local sources reported over 10 occupation aircraft participated in the raid, targeting Yemen's capital. Turning to other news, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi reaffirmed his country's right to uranium enrichment, rejecting recent European demands to end the activity. He stressed that Tehran will not accept proposals to stop the enrichment, calling the right non-negotiable. While in Oman, Araghchi also revealed the possibility of setting a date for a new round of indirect talks with the United States in the coming days. In a related news story, U.S. President Donald Trump said he warned Zionist Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu against any action targeting Iran, describing such moves as inappropriate. Trump assured Netanyahu that Washington and Tehran are nearing a nuclear agreement amid growing concerns that the Zionist entity's potential actions could undermine ongoing diplomatic efforts. And as you followed in our tonight's headlines, the week-long trade fair set a new participation record, with organizers and diplomats highlighting its role in boosting economic ties between Algeria and Mauritania. Algerian Ambassador Amin Sid called the event a key platform to strengthen bilateral cooperation and fulfill shared aspirations. The Algerian Economic Renewal Council noted such exhibitions create valuable business opportunities while deepening relations between the neighboring countries.
We don't see trade with the brotherly nation as mere commerce. We do not view Mauritania as a market, but rather as a brother and neighbor, an extension of us, just as we are an extension of it. This relationship is strengthened through academic and educational cooperation, which will truly help build bridges, bonds between the two peoples, especially among the youth, who are a vital and future-oriented segment of society.
On a related note, Mohammed Ahmed Al-Kharashi from the Union of the Algerian University Graduates highlighted the recent positive progress in the Algerian-Mauritanian relations. He stressed the importance of hosting the Algerian Products exhibition in Mauritania as a key step in strengthening ties.
Algeria has become Mauritania's top trading partner, with trade exchanges increasing by 100% in recent years, particularly between 2018 and 2025. At this point, we can only express our gratitude to all the economic stakeholders who participated in the previous exhibitions, especially the Algerians who undertook the journey, as well as His Excellency the Ambassador and his dedicated team.
The Algerian Products exhibition in Mauritania, which ended on Wednesday, saw over 40 partnership agreements signed between Algerian and Mauritanian institutions. The deals span sectors including pharmaceuticals, furniture, and trade services. Mauritanian business leaders praised Algerian products for their quality and competitive prices.
This year's exhibition set a record with 206 Algerian companies participating, far more than before. This shows that the Mauritanian market is strategic for Algerian businesses. The event featured strong Algerian public and private companies.
Still with Algeria-related news, Algeria was elected to the Executive Committee of the International Gas Union at the 29th World Gas Congress in Beijing. Sonatrach said the election highlights the Algerian Gas Industry Association's strong track record and expertise in advancing the gas sector nationally and internationally. It also reflects Algeria's renewed focus on open governance, stakeholder dialogue, and strategic global energy engagement. To other regional development, Morocco has sparked outrage by honoring Zionist leaders and deepening ties with occupying Israel, marking what many call a historic betrayal by the Makhzen regime. This move comes amid ongoing violence in Gaza and widespread condemnation of Morocco's normalization efforts. Hossein Burkan has more.
On blood that flows beyond what oceans can hold, on skulls too heavy for the highest peaks, and on stories of pain that shakes the very universe. The betrayal of the Makhzen unfolds along the slopes of the Atlas Mountains. For 600 days, a systemic genocide devastated Gaza, while normalization reached its most blatant form when the Makhzen invited the Zionist entity to participate in the so-called African Lion military drills, alongside the notorious Golani Brigade, known for decades of crimes, including the massacre of 15 medics in Rafah. In a shocking act of hypocrisy, the Makhzen lavished favors on the Zionist entity that even its closest Western allies hesitated to offer. It went as far as mimicking Gaza's resistance tunnels, seemingly provoking the occupiers. Rapidly growing normalization agreements, presented as if rooted in centuries of history, were exposed by Gaza's suffering as nothing but betrayal. Claims by Rabat that it would defend the Palestinian cause, especially through its leadership in Al-Quds Committee, proved hollow. Instead, normalization melted into open support for occupation and genocide. Worse still, weapons unloaded in Moroccan ports were later used in Gaza's attacks. This betrayal struck deeply at Palestinians everywhere, including Dr. Aliyah al-Najjar, whose heart was shattered by the slaughter of her 9 children under Zionist orders. Meanwhile, medals are shamelessly handed out in this so-called kingdom of normalization. Francesca Albanese, the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in the occupied Palestinian territories, urged the Makhzen to respect international law and prosecute those responsible for war crimes. She warned the world is witnessing a new moral collapse in Morocco, where those boasting of leading Al-Quds affairs, like King Mohammed VI, are now echoing history's darkest betrayals. Behind them, millions of Moroccans cry out in sorrow, rejecting this betrayal that will not be forgotten until victory finally writes the last word.
Thousands protested in Rabat outside parliament organized by the Moroccan Front to support Palestine and oppose normalization. Demonstrators condemned Zionist crimes, demanded an end to normalization, and rejected Zionist soldiers' participation in Moroccan military exercises. Tahar Dridi, a front leader, urged all Moroccans to unite and push the government to sever ties with the entity. Switching focus to the war in Ukraine, the Kremlin stressed that Russia's national interest is paramount for President Vladimir Putin, responding to U.S. President Donald Trump's claim that Putin is playing with fire by refusing ceasefire talks with Kiev. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said any meeting between Putin, Trump, and Ukrainian President Zelensky must follow proper preparations and discussions.
At the same time, there are a lot of nuances regarding subject of discussion that cannot be sacrificed. None of the parties will sacrifice them because of the national interest. Just like the U.S., Russia also has its national interest that is a paramount for us and for our president.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Wednesday that Russia has proposed holding the next peace talks with Ukraine in Istanbul on June 2nd. He confirmed that Moscow has prepared a detailed memorandum addressing the crisis' root causes. The Russian delegation led by Vladimir Medinsky is ready to present the memorandum and clarify its position during the talks. Moving on to a different matter, the 22 OPEC Plus members renewed their commitment to voluntary production cuts through 2026. Algeria's energy ministry said ministers tasked OPEC's secretariat with creating a mechanism to assess members' maximum sustainable output, setting baselines for 2027. The Joint Ministerial Monitoring Committee stressed that global oil market stability depends on strict collective compliance with OPEC Plus decisions. Elsewhere in Africa, Sudanese human rights groups say the Rapid Support Forces attacks on power stations have worsened the humanitarian crisis, including a sharp rise in cholera cases. Mohammed Salah ad-Din of the Sudanese Emergency Lawyers Organization told All24 News that the forces targeted 3 key power stations in Omdurman and the strategic Marwi Dam.
The Rapid Support Forces have targeted 3 power stations in Omdurman. They also targeted the Marwa Dam, a major reservoir for electricity generation in Sudan. The power outage also caused water shortages. This has forced citizens to transfer water from unsanitary sources. Furthermore, the cost of purchasing water in Sudan is currently high, and it's purchased at exorbitant prices. With the war and the destruction of health infrastructure, power and water stations have been destroyed amid a weak or non-existent response to the crisis or the epidemic in Sudan, or to control it.
The Rapid Support Forces, the RSF, have ordered to the forced deportation of displaced people from Al Fasher to Manwashi in South Darfur, according to Sudanese media reports. The move violates international humanitarian laws protecting displaced civilians. The same sources added that the RSF is using displaced people as human shields and frontline defenses. Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim said ASEAN reached consensus on handling U.S. tariffs during the 26th ASEAN Summit in Kuala Lumpur. stressed that Southeast Asian leaders agreed to avoid trade decisions that harm member states or key partners like China in dealings with Washington.
Efforts should be made to integrate the markets of the three sides into a large shared market with more efficient mobility of resources, technologies, and talents, along with enhanced trade and investment liberalization and facilitation, so as to fully unlock the huge potential of open development.
And that's the end of our news program for tonight. For more updates, you can always check our social media platforms. Thank you for tuning in. Good night.